It was especially like an example that I can think of in recent history was when the Bucks took a walkout in 2020.
Is that Siri?
Sorry, it was Siri popped up. I don't know.
Siri's like, I didn't get that. Speak up, bitch. Welcome to Spinsters, a podcast where we want Jaylen Brown, even if the Nets don't, and maybe the Celtics don't either. Today, we have with us Ben Golliver. Finally, he is a national NBA writer for the Washington Post, and he's the author of Bubble Ball, which was about the NBA during the bubble. We also, of course, have Jordan, and we have our special guest producer, Peter Moses, who has been, how long have we worked together now?
A year and a half.
Year and a half.
Happy to be here. Scorpio, and also my moon sign is also Scorpio. So full Scorpio. Get ready.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Pew, pew, pew. No, that's great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed's doing something no other job site has done. Now with Indeed, businesses only pay for quality applications matching the sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/Spinsters to start hiring now. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Hello, Ben. How are you?
Doing great. It's so nice to be finally on this show. I love you guys. Listened pretty much since the first episode. I've been forever in your debt, Haley, for the incredible reading that you gave me a couple of years ago, which was just absolutely perfect. I still hear from people about that. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Do you really?
Yeah, every once in a while, because it was so different, you know, like you came on Open Floor and typically we're like breaking down trade analysis and you're telling me my moon and all these different things that nobody had ever heard before. And it was so shockingly accurate, I think was what really threw people. So
look, I appreciate that. Another win for astrology. Honestly,
this is so on brand. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about, but I still know what you're talking about, what she did.
Thank you. I am excited. We're excited to have you because you can actually bring NBA analysis. So let's start with Jaylen Brown, the aforementioned Jaylen Brown. Look, apparently the Nets don't think he's enough. I hope this is the most up-to-date thing, but let's see. I pulled this from like a Yahoo article. According to The Athletic, Shams Scenario initially offered the Celtics initially offered the Brooklyn Nets a package of Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a draft pick. The Nets countered, asking for Brown, Marcus Smart, and more draft capital. Coincidentally, I guess we have to say to kick it off, Jaylen is a member of the Celtics because of a previous blockbuster deal with Brooklyn, right? So it's not like they're not connected already. Their fates have been intertwined. Doesn't seem like Jaylen was happy with the news. He sent out a tweet. Got a history now of being a cryptic tweeter. He just sent out SMH, right? Jordan, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
SMH, no punctuation, no nothing. Capital S, I do want to highlight, not all capital. I think that would have been a different tone if it was all capital SMH, but normal punctuation there.
Yeah, if it was all capital, would have been, you know, he's very upset. Now it's kind of like he's distanced and upset. Then whose side would this be smarter for, dumber for? Are we undervaluing KD here? Are we undervaluing Jaylen? Would Marcus Smart be thrown into any trade ever? It seems like he's going to be a career Celtic until he gets hurt and they decide to trade him.
Well, I'm just glad we've upgraded from trying to parse emojis to now abbreviations. This feels like a step in the right direction. Maybe we'll get full tweet sentiments here in the next couple of years when it comes to the trade rumors. I was with you, trying to look at the SMH with the Capitals or not. I mean, to me, it's just kind of a matter of fatigue for Jaylen Brown. It's like, I've been in the Kawhi rumors and then, you get Anthony Davis rumors. And it's like, meanwhile, all he's done is ascend to all-star status, help take a team to the finals. I thought he was their best player in the finals. And so to me, if you're trying to make a swap and you look at their age difference, and even their salary difference, I'm not sure Boston would have to throw in a ton beyond Jaylen Brown in terms of players to get this deal done. Who else is Brooklyn kind of looking at in terms of centerpiece players? I mean, the Phoenix Suns package kind of collapsed because DeAndre Ayton had to sign that offer sheet. We haven't really heard any other players as good as Jaylen Brown be kind of thrown into this mix. So this kind of feels like the best offer, Brooklyn has seen so far. And I can understand why, if you're the Nets, that's probably not enough. I mean, don't you want more if you're trading away Kevin Durant, a guy who you kind of built everything around and you've had some success with these last couple of years? This, to me, it kind of feels like a trade rumor where nobody's happy. Like, the Celtics are like, we don't want to give you all that. Jaylen's upset. KD seems very upset. I mean, he's not talking to anybody, laying really low and making weird tweets of his own. And then the Nets are just sort of like, well, will somebody please give us a Rudy Gobert package? Like, we're looking for the Rudy Gobert package. And so I don't know. I'm not sure we're going to see a deal with these terms quite yet.
Yeah, to me, it feels like, to see how realistic this is, we need to see how far gone KD is. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been through breakups where you break up with a person, you don't really mean it. You're just like trying to make a point. So I don't know, because he's obviously been very unhappy. I believe I might have dreamt this because I had a lot of nightmares last night that I don't want to get into, but it was scary enough that I remembered it when I woke up. Like, those kind of nightmares are the worst kind.
Yeah.
Remembered it in detail. Anyway, tell me if I'm making this up, but Kyrie reportedly, whatever, said he's going to play for the Nets no matter what, right? This season, whether KD.
Well, look, it's a news story every week with Kyrie. And it's like, whatever Kyrie says, I don't think you want to base any of your decisions off that. It's like,
fair enough.
How available was he for the Nets when he was, theoretically happy last year? I mean, he showed up and it was less than part-time. If I was the Nets, here's what I would do. I would trade Kyrie and just get the kind of toxicity out of the way. And then I would go back to Kevin Durant using your breakup analogy and be like, hey, are you serious here? Are we done? Or are we just sort of like on a break until training camp, right? And once you sort of sever ties with Kyrie, get all that energy out of the picture, is it kind of a lifting of spirits for Brooklyn? I mean, those guys were mentally exhausted. I went to their last two games at home in Brooklyn. They rolled over. I mean, Boston just steamrolled them at home in the playoffs. You hardly ever see that for a team with players that good. And they looked relieved to have their season over. They were all just miserable. They wanted to go on summer vacation, right? So that's why I'm wondering, like, okay, if you just solve the Kyrie question, get that drama out of the way, maybe Kevin Durant would be willing to run it back with a different look Nets team, maybe a little bit lower expectations. But if he's still out, then you just got to trade him. I don't understand any world where a team that takes itself seriously would have its top two players not be fully invested. Kyrie's clearly not. KD is kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and try to go forward with that as their strategy. It makes no sense to me.
And it's just the history of every time Kyrie's saying he's all in for something, it always turns out to be the opposite. So if I'm the Nets and I hear that I'm playing for Brooklyn no matter what, I'm running the other way, because that's not going to end well. And for KD, he is also doing the thing where after a breakup, he's trying to pick up a new hobby, where he started TikTok and he's trying to figure out what to do on TikTok. And it's, Haley, you have to see these videos. It's just him videoing himself with the caption of, how do I work this? And it went viral.
Every millennial's first TikTok is like, everyone. I don't really know what I'm doing on here, but I didn't know he was doing TikTok. That doesn't feel like something that he would do, but
I know. It's
you're right, maybe
also not good, not a good sign. Both sides from Kyrie or KD. I totally agree with you that they should cut ties. They should see what else they could get. Going back to Jaylen Brown, I mean, remember, thinking of tweets, he liked that tweet from the fan that said, he's disrespected. The fans don't respect him. The organization doesn't seem like they respect him. So if you're Jaylen, there's only so much you can take where your worth and how good you are. You carried the Celtics team when Jason Tatum was a little MIA. You have to know that you are worth more. You don't need a whole package. You don't need other picks to be thrown in. So I'm curious how many times he's going to take this type of treatment. Yeah.
That's a good point. And just because we're crossing so many lines and comparing all of them to each other right now. I know that we all have had our, issues with how Kyrie's handled himself in certain situations, and, that he particularly didn't get one shot in, specifically that we all wish he did. But don't forget, like, Kyrie was also seemed pretty mistreated and pushed out of Boston. And Boston has a history of, like, yeah, some players seem like they are ride or die, Boston forever. But a lot of players have also had really poor experiences there and with the organization. The organization, that's probably one of the biggest examples of, like, we're a family being a lie. You can always point to Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas is the best example of what you're saying, right? Well, what's interesting is, so you have a new front office now, though. It's Brad Stevens, and his moves so far have been like, he's like a surgeon. It's like, all right, I got to go get a front court guy. Boom, it's the Al Horford trade. I have to go get somebody at the deadline. It's Derek White. They're like these real calculated moves to try to fill holes. And all the dorks on the internet like me just go nuts because it's like, wow, it makes so much sense. It's not costing money. This is an amazing work by Brad Stevens. This would be a real swing if he's like, you know what, we were 2 wins away from a title. Let's blow up our core and trade maybe our most popular player. When you ask Celtics fans, like, who do they like the most? I think most would say Tatum's the most talented guy on the roster, right? But and Smart's sort of like, he's the dog of the group, right? Mm-hmm. But Jaylen, he's kind of combines the talent plus the work ethic, plus he's homegrown. They've seen him develop step by step. I mean, even these videos of him, like, working out in the pool where he's like jumping up 13 feet. Celtics fans are going nuts over the pool videos this summer, right? And so to watch him leave would be sort of heartbreaking for them. And so it comes down to, like, is Brad that cold-blooded and ruthless? Like, does he have that in him? The owners do. I mean, typically owners are like, get talent. Who cares? Let's do this. Let's win a title, right? Let's make a bunch of money selling KD jerseys. I just wonder, is that Brad's lane, or is he going to say, we've constructed this perfect group, we just need to run it back and we'll be good? I don't know.
Yeah, something me and Jordan talk about a lot is that too many front offices want to microwave a team, and that can be a mistake. And there's a lot of teams that we can point to. The Chris Paul trade to the Rockets is like my big example I always go back to. You don't always need to do that. Like, what they traded their entire bench, and they had a fantastic bench, and they gave them all to the Clippers. And then the Clippers were the team that had the most depth for years. Not that it worked out for the Clippers either, but you don't necessarily always want to microwave a team. There's so much upward momentum. And I wish that we took this playoffs as that. There's always the, like, you forget about it when the team doesn't win. But KD's an exception. Like, of course you'd want, if you had the chance at him, you'd want to entertain it or see what you could get for it. But again, if they don't get him, it's not like it's a loss. They are building a lot. And I don't know necessarily they need to make a huge change.
Can I ask you guys a question on that? I mean, when KD first made his trade demand, I was expecting like crazy offers to be floated out within like 72 hours. I was ready to make an offer for him on behalf of the Lakers or the Clippers just so I could watch him play in LA every single night, right? We haven't really seen that, over the last couple of it's almost been a month, really. And you look at his age, he's going to be 34. You look at the contract, 40 plus million. You look at the injury issues, missed 25 plus games last year. And then I think he gets caught up in some of the Nets drama. I don't think he's the problem, really. I do think it was mostly a Kyrie and maybe to a lesser degree a Harden thing last year. But I think he gets mixed into like, oh, well, are you bringing this guy on? Is it going to be a soap opera? Is he going to want out or whatever else? Mm-hmm. Is that giving teams pause in a way that we wouldn't have thought? Because you hear the idea of Kevin Durant trade requests. It's like, oh, everybody get to the phone. It's like the old Joe Dumars picture with 2 phones. Like, let's call in and make whatever offers we can. We just haven't seen it. Have you guys been surprised by that?
I was actually thinking about that right before you asked that, because it seems like if I'm a team, you can't forget what just happened in Brooklyn. Like the preseason, all of them going together, all of them teaming up, and for it to amount to nothing and everyone unhappy and drama, you have to think twice. Like, we remember KD making the trade, going to the Warriors, him winning, everybody happy, cheering over there. But that ended ugly. And then you have this, and this is ending ugly. You have to think twice to say, okay, is it worth it to blow everything up that we've worked for at maybe a chance at a title, but recency bias shows us that it's not guaranteed. Like Kevin Durant is not going to guarantee you getting there. And if you're Boston, you're saying we beat them on the way. So you really have to think about it. And so if I'm an owner, if I'm a GM, I'm not rushing to the phone. I'm saying, okay, does this make sense to everything? Even though he is a superstar, but you have to think about, as we're learning, I'm seeing in the W now, chemistry and all of that sometimes goes further than having that superstar or blowing up everything that you've worked for to get this one shot. So I do think it's pause. What do you think, Haley?
Well, my big question is kind of on the other end. Maybe there's a good chance that it's that, right? Like if he isn't guaranteed to take you all the way, maybe they're using LeBron as an example. Like it's not 1-to-1, but are you really going to blow it all up if you aren't for sure going to go all the way, like you said? But I also think it's the Nets. I think the Nets are pissed, like livid. They made this huge trade for these guys.
Yeah.
It's amounted in so much embarrassment. So I think it's probably not leaked at all, or not a lot of trade rumors have leaked at all, because the Nets are probably asking for so much in return. Yeah.
Just to put a Band-Aid over it, just to make them feel better.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, just to make the case for the trade though, I mean, Tatum and KD together, is that the best wing duo ever? I mean, I can't really think of one that would be better, because I remember when Kawhi and Paul George came together like 3 years ago, it was like, are they the next Jordan and Pippen? Like KD and Tatum to me is definitely better than those guys, right? I mean, Kevin's better than Kawhi, I think, historically. And just if I had to pick one based on health and all that, I'd take KD. And I take Tatum at his age right now over Paul George because he's had some injury issues too. So everybody says wings win in the NBA now. You'd have two of the best, 4 wings in the league on the same team. Who's guarding them? I mean, Chris Middleton, you're going to have to clone him if you're Milwaukee. Like you have enough guys to keep up there. And then, Miami, they lose PJ Tucker. That would have been helpful in a playoff matchup. So they don't, Jimmy can guard one of them, but he can't guard both. So I feel like if they did the trade, if they were cutthroat and ruthless, they said, sorry, Jaylen, we thought you were going to be back, but, what's a Celtic? Always a Celtic, whatever line you want to give him. And they went forward with KD. They probably win the title. So, I mean, there's got to be at least some motivation from the Celtic side to think about this.
Yeah, definitely. To your point about Paul George and Kawhi, I can't wait to see them play together. Really looking forward to it. We can finally find out if it's going to work out or not.
I love how I feel after a good workout. I feel strong, confident, and motivated, but your girl ain't young anymore. Those sore joints and muscles sometimes weigh me down and keep me from reaching my fitness goals. That's why I use the doTERRA Deep Blue Stick. It provides targeted, natural, and reliable relief without synthetic ingredients. Learn more at doterra.com/spinsters. That's DOTERRA.com/spinsters. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring in one place so easy because of sponsoring jobs. No other job site takes care of you like Indeed, because with Indeed, you only pay if an applicant meets your must-have requirements. And Indeed's doing something no other job site has done. Now with Indeed, businesses only pay for quality applications matching the sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/spinsters to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/spinsters. Indeed.com/spinsters. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Okay, so what do you guys want to talk about next? We could talk about the CBA negotiations that you brought up, Ben, when we were talking about what we should talk about. LeBron signing an extension. We could talk about Liz the big Liz elephant in the room.
Well, that's the breaking news. I feel like we should go there. So what happened? What's this deal, Jordan? So Liz, she did like 3 profiles at the start of the season. Everyone was like, I'm where I want to be. I'm in LA. And I'm sitting here thinking, great. Like, you know, she has such a huge personality. She's great for the game. She's on this kind of loaded team with names. And she made it 3 months. Was that pretty much to the All-Star break? And that was it?
You know, Ben, someone asked me today if I was mad at her as a Sparks fan, and I'm not. I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at myself for believing that this would work out, that this would be wonderful. She had a press conference. They had her jersey ready. This doesn't happen in the W. Like, you got to wait for your jersey. You got to see what number is available. They had everything ready, rolled out the red carpet. She had profiles. She was saying, you know, we're going to have a ring at the end of the season. We're stacked. And then she just pieced out. She did a contract divorce. The Sparks have already been going through so many changes this season. They got rid of Derek Fisher because it was Derek Fisher. He needed to go. It was time. And they're already, you know, they're without Candace Parker. They're looking at her in the rearview mirror. She's holding a championship trophy from Chicago. The Sparks are trying to rebuild. Liz comes as this saving grace. This is going to be the new Sparks. You know, they're comparing her to, you know, this is a Lisa Leslie type person we need on this team. And from the gate, I looked at my fiance, Fred. We went to opening weekend and I was like, she's not in it. She's not in it 100%. Like, you could already tell. She was excited to be in LA, but she still wasn't. She was trying to figure out, you know, do I want to play more inside? She wanted to shoot more jumpers, which I'm like, you're getting the paint. Please do a post move. And as the season went on, the coaching changes, the chemistry issues, no one was really naming her, but they just kept saying there's egos in the locker room. There's things happening. You never want to hear the word locker room in any type of talk. You are a fan of a team. Something going on in the locker room, you know it's not going to end well. And we all woke up this morning with news that she wanted out, and it happened pretty much immediately with this term contract divorce, which is never happened in WNBA history. This season, it's happened twice with Tina Charles and now Liz Cambage. So she quit. She quit on us. And the Sparks are in the last spot for the playoffs right now. Like, they have a chance to make the playoffs. And this is 1 month left of this season. It's so terrible. We don't even know what's going on, but it's so terrible that you can't even finish out the season. You can't help your team make the playoffs when, you know, you were saying you wanted a ring after all this. Like, they legitimately had a chance. And there's a history of this with her. And I think that's the most frustrating part, and the part that I get so upset at myself. When she was in Dallas, she wanted out. She quit on that team. Then she got to the Aces. It was supposed to be the best thing ever. She left that team. Australia, they're about to go for the Olympic gold medal, and she pieces out on that team. And now we're here. And so it's really frustrating because I want to root for her, but she does things like this, and we don't know the whole story, of course, but just from a fan perspective, it's kind of hard.
Didn't something like this happen to Angel McCoughtry too this year?
Well, Angel McCoughtry, she got bought out. So the Minnesota Lynx basically
wasn't the same kind of divorce. Okay.
Wasn't the same kind of divorce. They just bought her out. Angel was coming off of injury. She's really close to retirement. So that was kind of a, hey, we need your spot. Basically.
No DJ sets involved.
No DJ sets involved. Yeah.
Well, I'm catching the fool me once, fool me twice, shame on you type vibe coming from what you're saying. You mentioned TikTok earlier. This kind of reminds me of that meme that's like, am I the drama? You know that? It's like, I can't be the drama. Is she the drama? Or there was some mental health things going on with her decision to kind of pull out from the Olympics last year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the issue here, or was this something different? I mean, I haven't read up on it deeply, but it just seems like kind of crazy. Like, I don't know what the NBA comparison of this would be when you're talking about just walking away and basically giving your money back, right?
Basically, and like I said, since this is kind of breaking news, we don't know the whole story. Maybe more things are going to come out. Maybe it was, she really gelled with Derek Fisher, and that's the reason why she signed there. Now he's not there. So why am I here? I don't know my position. I don't know my role. I've had a couple interviews with Jordan Canada and Lexi Brown on the Sparks, and they're like, everyone's trying to figure out their role in this new system. We just learned a new system at the start of the season. Middle of the season, we had to learn a whole new system. So there was a lot of buy-in that had to happen, and it didn't seem like she wanted to buy in. That's what it looks like from the outside.
Well, I have like thoughts on her, but specifically, like you said, there's like a month left of the season. Can the Sparks do this without her, do you think?
Well, a roster spot in the WNBA is a hot ticket. It is a hot commodity. So Amani McGee-Stafford, who's another wonderful player. She's 6'8", JaVale McGee's sister. She was already in the Sparks comments like, oh, you hiring? Like, we need a post. So if we can substitute and sign another big who is off waivers right now or not signed to a team, there's plenty of them. There's so many great players that aren't signed right now. I think we could still do it. I think if it takes a lot of like I said, the buy-in, hey, you're coming in, this is your role. We need somebody to stop the basket. We need somebody to rebound. Like, we need a defensive presence, which sometimes Liz was, sometimes she wasn't. Sometimes she was so frustrated with the refs that it would take her out of the game. So, hey, Amani McGee-Stafford, I'm saying we're hiring. Let's go. Let's run it to the playoffs. We got a month left, like 9 or 10 games. Like, this is the time to make a push. And that's tough to put the team in that situation to say like, oh, we're so close. Like, we could actually make the playoffs if we just turn this around.
Yeah. I remember being when did we go to that Sparks game last year? Like, there were 4 or 5 games left.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of, they had more of an outside shot then than they do now. They're closer now. But it's tough to see them in a similar situation where it's possible, but it's not looking likely. I know that the term contract divorce is goofy, and when it first popped up this season, I laughed too. But I don't know who's coming up with it, because it's not just one team, but I actually do like it because it is suggesting something we don't see in sports too much. I think soccer more, which is like, it's a mutual parting of ways. And so that suggests that the player has the autonomy to do that, which is interesting and kind of new. With Liz specifically, look, there's a lot of very unflattering stories that have been unflattering, might not even be strong enough, that have been shared publicly. I almost just said shout out to Andrew Bogut, but I take that back. I retract. And privately, like, I've heard, even just season, I've heard some odd stories about her in the past that are just make her come across as like rude, frankly. But to, like, Ben, you brought up mental health. Something I want to say after talking to a friend today, because he sent me the link and we were talking about it. Even people, this maybe a comparison, an NBA comparison that's not one-to-one, because they never are, is Ben Simmons. Even people who come across rude as fuck have mental health issues, struggle with mental health issues. And that doesn't make them less valid. Not everything is as clean as Kevin Love, DeMar DeRozan. These are idols. They have had good track records, I guess, with their personalities. And they're adored figures. Even people we don't particularly find it easy to cheer for have mental health issues. So I just wish we don't make it as black and white. You know what I mean? She very well could be going through that. And she also could be selfish. Those can both be true. So,
well, in her defense, she's also like incredibly charismatic. I haven't spent a ton of time around her, but I was struck with her ability to communicate with reporters and kind of say what she wanted to say. And you were talking about the refs earlier. She's kind of calling out the refs for not treating her right. I just kind of loved all of it. This was a few years ago during their playoff series when I was covering them. And so, who knows exactly what's going on with her. It did kind of remind me. I've been reading this upcoming biography about Charles Barkley. Timothy Bella, a guy at the Washington Post, wrote it. It's out in a couple months. And he almost left Auburn after his sophomore year because he was upset with his coach. He wanted to quit on his coach, quit on his teammates. He wanted out. And the main reason why he didn't, according to the book, is the coach's wife was basically like his surrogate mom, like his college mom almost, kind of just took him under the wing and made sure he was fed and made sure he was comfortable, because he's going to basically an all-white Auburn, back during the 80s. And sometimes you just need those superstar whisperers that, that's that person who can actually get through to the person at any given moment of their career. And maybe she just hasn't found that person, because I think, as Jordan was saying earlier, it's only a month. You never know what happens when you make the playoffs. Like, this could still be, a great season. There's a lot left at stake. And so if you don't have that person, maybe, that is something that could have bridged the gap here, so it didn't have to come to this. I'm curious, Jordan, do you like contract divorce too? Because when I heard it the first time, whenever it was a couple of weeks ago, I was like, that is really weird. It's like nails on a chalkboard, but I hadn't really thought about it how Haley was describing.
Yeah, it is a really strange term. And I think it just makes all of us go like, wait, what does that even mean? Like, where's the money involved? Like, did they just get waived? Like, what does this mean? But it is a mutual, you're going to your partner or your coach or the organization and you're like, this isn't working out. Is it working out for you? And they're like, nah, it's not. So then they just divorce. But what it does mean, is that just like what happened to Tina Charles when she requested a contract divorce from the Phoenix Mercury, then another team could sign them off waivers. Like Tina Charles was on a Seattle roster in like 3 days. She was like, you guys were my second option when I was in free agency. I tried this with Phoenix, it didn't work out. Let's give it a go. But the conversations around Liz, which is like a little bit alarming a little bit for her, is teams are like, I don't know if you're worth it. Like, kind of like, am I the drama? Kind of like we're talking about with Katie. They have pause when it comes to signing her. She is a 6'7", 6'8" post. She is dominant. She could take up space. But teams are like, we've looked at these past couple teams and their records and how they're not winning as much. We want to do that. There is pause there, and conversations are saying, does she have a future in the WNBA after this? Like, so it's not only that this is for this season, but I think this was a very big decision for her career. I think she's making a statement of like, I don't know if I want to play in the WNBA much longer, which she said before. So it's kind of making that a statement with this divorce.
I didn't know she said that before. That shines a lot of light on it. And, players, I don't think we usually give them the bigger picture of they might want a life beyond basketball. So if that's what she wants, I think that would be a better route than like giving up on teams, because again, take care of yourself. Absolutely. But if you don't have it in you, there's a lot of people depending on you as a teammate. And that's, hopefully she's good and hopefully her teammates are good. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about LeBron. Ben, you just wrote a piece asking if he should sign an extension next week. I did not know this was coming up. I don't think the rest of the world knows this is coming up, despite like the only NBA news being Jaylen Brown tweeting. So what is your view? What's the setting here? What's your viewpoint?
Well, the fascinating part about LeBron is his free agency decisions are either like broadcast globally on ESPN for, with Jim Gray, everybody's sitting down at the Boys and Girls Club, or they're just like whispered, like not talked about, right? So like when he re-signed with the Lakers in December 2020, it was like right after the bubble. I mean, he basically put out like, I don't even know if it was a one-line statement. It's just like, yep, we're back. Here's the contract terms. Like, did not make a big deal about it at all. And he's been really quiet all summer on this stuff, and look, it's been a tough summer for LeBron, right? Steph wins his 4th ring. So now you both have 4. So you have to hear about that rivalry. They haven't traded Westbrook. It was kind of like, hey, Lakers front office, you had one job, right? Please trade Russell Westbrook. It's time to move forward and do something different. They haven't gotten that accomplished. And you look at some of the pickups that they made. I mean, they're fine moves, but it's nobody who's really going to make a big impact in terms of wins and losses for the Lakers. And so you imagine if you're LeBron, you're weighing this decision, you're watching everything that's unfolding. if I was him, I wouldn't be happy. I don't know if I would be like frustrated and trying to demand a trade and all that. I would be like, wait a minute, do I really want to be here for a couple more years? Last year was really tough for the Lakers. You know, by the end of the season, they were all out of gas, just kind of mentally over it, exhausted. You know, that's why they crumbled out of even the play-in tournament. As you know, ultimately, did they even want to be there? And I'm not sure that they did, because it's just kind of prolonging the inevitable. But if you're LeBron, you're also about to turn 38. They're offering you potentially 2 years and almost $100 million. It's pretty good money. You get to stay in LA. Bronny's not quite ready for the NBA yet, so you're still kind of biding your time until he can kind of be in the draft. So there are reasons to stay. I just think it's a really interesting, like almost like a, you know, office cooler conversation. Like, should LeBron want to stay with the Lakers, or should he try to go somewhere else? I mean, maybe back to Cleveland, maybe just play the season out and see how it goes. You know, usually he's really good at kind of scripting his career, right? It's like, I'm going to Miami and it's going to be the Heatles and we're taking over. Now I'm going back to Cleveland. It's this beautiful, heartwarming comeback story, and I'm the homecoming king, right? Then he goes to LA and it's like this big glitzy media thing. Like, what's the story if he stays with the Lakers? It's like kind of slow. You know, he's going to start getting MJ Wizards comparisons here pretty soon, right? And does he want that? You know, is there a better story? So I don't know. I mean, if you were like in his camp and he's like, hey, should I do this or not? What do you think? I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, because to me, it feels a little bit like he's damned if he does, or he's damned if he doesn't. Because if he doesn't sign it all year, all we're going to talk about next year, LeBron's going to be a free agent, right?
Oh gosh, I don't want that. But it's so interesting too. You mentioned his age. Like, anyone else, if they had an extension, to be like, oh, can you just ship it to me overnight so I can sign it so you don't change your mind? But then you see LeBron playing in the Drew League and he looks like he's 25. Like, he's still so spry. He still has so much to give to this game. The expectation that we put on LeBron in year like 100 is so wild. But I think he signs it. I think he's fine in LA. I don't know. I don't think maybe it's not been broadcast and not that big of a deal, because if it was a big deal, he would make it a big deal, I guess is what I'm saying. Right. He would want it broadcast and he would want it that way. So maybe the fact that we haven't really heard this and this is whispers, he's just like, yeah, I'm going to sign.
I have a devil's advocate. Please.
Ooh.
Okay. Think Lemonade. Unannounced album dropped. Right? What if he's gonna do that? What if this is all he wants to keep it quiet? He's making big plans. There are signs that, I mean, not as many in the past, of him pulling the Rick Pitino, like, public, I'm really unhappy, and, you know, with X player, and it's very cryptic, but it's not cryptic at all. You know, we saw what he said during All-Star, but also that doesn't mean that's entirely his personality. Like, you kind of learn from that. And I think we've all had moments where we look back at how we behaved and we're like, I don't really know if that was the best thing for me to do. So it's not like that's entirely going to predict this time around, like, you know, just his track record. But it's interesting, you know, like you said, that would be the biggest story of 2023. His history would lead us to believe that that's what he would want. And like you said, Jordan, any other 37-year-old who turns 38 in December, he's a Capricorn, but I can't remember if it's December or January.
Yeah, December.
Who is about to turn 38, they want a contract simply because this would probably be their last. Like, they're lucky if they even get this one. So it's, you know, the LeBron of it all is just always so unique, and who knows? I think a lot of it has to do with Westbrook, and that's already predetermined. Like, they're not going to be able to trade him, it doesn't look like. So whether he can sign on mentally another year to play with Westbrook, that's probably what he's based his decision on. Or maybe he's looking ahead, like you suggested, Ben, because there's a chance maybe he's not trying to go far so he can rest his body for when.
Yeah, maybe he's tweeting about Mark Price at 2:30 in the morning for no reason at all, you know?
Well, there were some other Cleveland tweets, you know, or Akron tweets about his old coach getting the court at his high school named after him. You know, it's the LeBron James Arena, but now it's the Drew Joyce Court. So LeBron's kind of shouting those guys out too. So He's
Oh, no.
sprinkled a few things here and there. And if you start to imagine LeBron with Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and Darius Garland, like
going.
that is a real squad, right? So it gets a little bit more interesting than maybe like, say, next year's Lakers on paper, which to me are just really top heavy and probably not going to make a ton of noise.
Ron's also been in the entertainment industry enough now to know nothing sells better than a remake. So,
Right.
you know, what's more standard than him writing another I'm coming home letter? We've all done it before. We've all bought those tickets.
The Cavs fan has spoken on that.
Yeah, well, it's something that you have to kind of consider, just because, I mean, the Lakers don't have their future picks, right? Anthony Davis, it's like, you know, can you count on him or not? And Russell Westbrook, Haley nailed it. It's like, it's really hard to trade him. And LeBron kind of tried to flex during All-Star weekend, right? It seemed like he was saying, hey, we need to kind of shake things up. And the Lakers kind of flexed back and were like, you know, come into Genie's office. Let's talk about it. You know, we're not racing to trade all of our future picks just to get you somebody else to kind of fix that Westbrook situation. So I do think LeBron, even though his game is still incredible, it's just started to slip a little bit. He's not where he was a couple of years ago. And I think the same is true with his influence. I think his influence is just starting to slip a little bit. I still think he's the most influential player in the NBA, you know, probably by leaps and bounds. But I'm not sure he's still that guy who could just say, hey, I want this chess piece to move there and I get every move that I want. And these organizations are just going to do my bidding. But, you know, look, I'm not trying to run LeBron out of town either, though. There's some nights last year. Remember, he had 50 plus last year. It's, you know, he had the crypto.com going crazy. I mean, when he's at his best, he's still one of the best shows in the league.
For sure. Okay, let's move on quickly because I do want Ben's story time to the CBA negotiations, which are coming up following this next season, right? And this is also prompted by an article you wrote back in January.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you guys about Tamika Tremaglio. She's the most powerful woman in the NBA, you know, bottom line, period. You know, she's the new executive director of the Players Union. The NBA business is back in such a big way compared to where it was during the pandemic. I mean, I remember all the panic about, is there even going to be a league? Are they going to ever be able to get fans back? The NBA had 10 billion in revenue this past season, an all-time record, right? So they're feeling good. They want the good times to keep rolling. And actually both sides have the ability to opt out of their current collective bargaining agreement in December, which means that negotiations are sort of kind of ready to happen whenever they want them to happen. And the old joke used to be that NBA stood for nothing but attorneys. You know, David Stern's an attorney, Adam Silver's an attorney, everybody in the league office is attorneys. But, you know, Tamika actually comes from a little bit of a different background. She is, you know, a trained lawyer, but she's also an accountant. And I kind of think the NBA is starting to shift towards being nothing but accountants because there's just so much money at stake here. And when she got the job replacing Michelle Roberts, the players told her, look, be a rainmaker for us. We want you to grow wealth. You know, we want to start trying to get into ownership groups. We want to have our own licensing deals. We want you to try to find any other ways you can kind of create, you know, big, meaningful amounts of money for the players beyond just their typical contracts, right? And so she's kind of coming in this almost as the CEO of CEOs, where you've got all these players, you know, CJ McCollum, you know, he's worth hundreds of millions at this point. He's the new head of the Players Association. There's a lot of guys who are in that spot where they want to have kind of like, you know, big time wealth. And they've sort of tasked her with guiding that journey. And so to me, that there's actually a good optimistic note here because it means we're probably not going to have a lockout. There's so much money at stake that nobody wants to tip over the apple cart, right? But still, there are going to be some things they have to negotiate. Adam Silver was talking about it during Summer League. You know, there's the one and done rule potentially. You know, can you go straight from high school? There's the luxury tax system. There's the length of the schedule in terms of, are they playing too many games? Do they want to add a midseason tournament? So they have a number of issues that they've already sort of laid out as being the agenda for the next talks. But to me, it's just a really interesting dynamic where you've got this woman who's, you know, it's just been about numbers all of her life, just obsessed with trying to, you know, make wealth for her clients, now being in a situation where her clients are worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And we kind of see where this goes.
Jordan, you mentioned that you're a big fan. Have you met her or just from reading about her?
No, just from reading about her in that story. I love her energy, her vibe. I feel like that really jumped off the page when you interviewed her. And I love what CJ said in your story too about, you know, the difference between the players and the owners, where the players are making good money, but the owners and other executives have good money. Like they have the wealth that the players are trying to go after. And it seems like she is really hired at a specific time where it's like, yes, please get us all this money. Do what you do best. You compare the difference between Michelle Roberts and how she was kind of had to be the aggressor and be like, I'm not taking anything. We have to fight for all of this. And Tamika's coming in and saying, okay, we're working together. We've had those grievances, but now we went through a bubble season and we have to kind of come together. How can we make this work together? Do you feel like that's the overall vibe, that she's trying to just make sure everybody is working as a unit and make sure the players are getting more money?
Well, you nailed it on the personality side. I mean, Michelle Roberts is an intimidating woman. I'm not sure if you've met her, but you know, she's a lifelong lawyer. And if I could just imagine a lot of people walking into courtrooms, seeing her and then just kind of groaning and having the shoulder shrugs like, oh no, we got to go against Michelle today. This is not going to be a fun day. And Tamika, it's more of a bubbly personality. You know, she actually was a high school cheerleader, college cheerleader, and she's proud of that. She says, you know, still today, I'm a cheerleader for the sport. But she's also, you know, pretty ruthless. I mean, she's coming from Deloitte, which is this, you know, very famous global accounting firm. And she rose up the ranks there, you know, to the point where she could already kind of retire, you know, there. She was eligible for retirement already, which is, you know, pretty impressive given her age. But so she's got this bubbly side where she's sending out holiday cakes to, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of her friends that are handmade. She enlists her 2 sons to help her bake these things in their kitchen. So she's got that, you know, kind of friendly side to her. But she's also got, you know, a little bit of the Olivia Pope side to her too, where it's like the power suits, the nice heels, like, look, get me in a boardroom and I'm going to be able to outfox anybody. I loved, you know, the WNBA Player Association's head, Terry Jackson, telling the story about how they were in negotiations with their collective bargaining agreement with the WNBA. And Tamika was just hammering a point, you know, over and over again, where one of the WNBA representatives was like, I can't get Tamika's head out of my mind. You know, and he's admitting this during the negotiation. So, you know, you could tell she got into his head a little bit. But yeah, she's a fascinating lady. She's up early in the morning. She's on the, you know, pounding out the Pelotons or the rowing machine. You know, she tracks all of her steps with the Fitbit. I mean, she's just, you know, complete type A personality. And what I've been amazed, you know, by her is just the visibility. I have been going to a lot of playoff games, obviously, over these last couple of months, the NBA draft, you know, the draft lottery. It's like everywhere I go, I see her. She's courtside at Summer League. I mean, she is completely invested. She's trying to be a very visible face for this group of athletes. And I think that they appreciate that, right? I mean, Michelle Roberts lived in the bubble for 3 months as sort of like the den mom for all the players down there. She would just sit by the pool. They'd come over and like ask her for life advice. And, you know, she really cherished that role. And I think with Tamika, it's like, you know, there's a real power to her presence, you know, being at these events. And it's just a far cry from where the union was, you know, 15, 20 years ago with Billy Hunter and the scandals and all that kind of stuff.
She sounds like a Virgo. That's what I put my money on. The Peloton, burly, organized. Yeah. Can unite people. Sounds like a Virgo. I think that the stakes for this upcoming agreement are interesting to me because the teams are interested in a lot of change. For example, you know, one and done rule, like you mentioned, that's probably the biggest thing that we've heard about. And obviously between the owners and the players, we often hear about issues that affect the owners more taking precedent. But like you said, there's so much at play this time around. And I don't want to like equate too much the pandemic for players, you know, how it changed them and how it changed people who are not making millions of dollars. But we all kind of had a realization that this level of operating that we've been on, like, you know, work is not healthy and also not necessary. And even before the pandemic happened, for years, we've been talking about the schedule being unrealistic. More players are getting hurt. We've never seen the Clippers operate fully for long. You know, that's like, we're robbed of certain teams. And I know that players feel like they're robbed of certain points in their career. There's a lot of things that players could bring up. And also I'm curious how, player empowerment, as much as we say it now, will manifest into these labor talks, because at the end of the day, that's what they are. It's not just about broadcast money and what teams are going to be allowed to do and owners and et cetera. Like, these are very much the players going in and saying, this is what we want. This is what we need. I might be reading too much into it, but I could see this actually being a lockout, because I think that they are, again, to use the cliche term we all use now, more empowered than ever to say, this is what you need to give us. So I could see it. Maybe I'm reading too much into, the through line between players saying, I'm not going to play here anymore, and like contract divorces and, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it is
you've
very
hit on the two.
NBA.
You've hit on the two big issues, right? So you have this idea of trade demands, and I want to get out, and I'm taking, even with 4 years left, if you're Kevin Durant, I just want to take my ball and go somewhere else, right? That's a huge issue that really angers the owners, because they feel like, look, we're giving you guaranteed contracts, you're not living up to the bargain, right? Then you have this other issue, which is the owners really want the players to play every single night. They don't like load management. The television partners hate load management. Every time Charles Barkley goes on TV and jokes about, oh, the fans at home can go to sleep early, they don't have to watch this game. He's doing that on behalf of his bosses, basically, because they're saying, like, wait a minute, why aren't these guys out there actually playing these basketball games? So something is going to have to give, right? I mean, with this schedule, if you can't load manage and you've got all these players, racking up these miles, they're probably going to have to bring the schedule down, I would assume, or they're going to have to kind of reframe this in some different way, because it's just not realistic to expect that everybody's going to play all these games and not have injury issues and everything else. What I'm curious about, though, are the owners, is their bark bigger than their bite when it comes to these trade requests and trade demand stuff? Because they can get upset about it. I understand that. But do they really want to shut down the sport after just having a couple of years that were compromised, where they lost billions of dollars because they're so upset about it, right? Like, if I'm an NBA owner and I'm looking at what's happening in Brooklyn right now, I'm just laughing at the Nets. I'm not like, oh, no, this is horrible, the Nets are getting screwed. I'm like, no, you guys made a series of mistakes. You bet on the wrong stars. It blew up in your face. Tough luck. By the way, you're paying so much money to those stars that you have a gigantic luxury tax bill, and I'm getting money back from the NBA because of your luxury tax spending. This is great. Let's have some more Nets out there, And so that's where I kind of, I do wonder on the financial side, like, is the NBA almost too big to fail? Are they too profitable to fail here, where like eventually they're going to be able to find a way to make negotiations just so they can keep the cash registers going? And by the way, like, the NBA salaries have gotten completely insane. I mean, Damian Lillard signed a new deal that will eventually pay him more than $60 million a year. It's not that long ago that the entire salary cap for a whole team was $60 million. It's like within the last 15, 20 years. So if you're the players, do you really want to go to a lockout? It's like 60 million sounds pretty good to me. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, is that we've known for a long time. The example that I think of is the Bucks doing the walkout, and the whole, the entire league stopping as well. Who is going to blink first in a battle between the owners and the players is always going to be the players, because they have more money at stake. When you hear about, like, what is the stat? If $1 million versus $1 billion is like $1 million is the top of the Empire State Building, and the $1 billion is the whole thing. I don't know. It's something like that. If someone Googled like a comparison, because it is such a gross difference that these teams, I want to remind everyone, have only grown in value exponentially. Even when the NBA is quote unquote going through failing times, even when there's like through the pandemic, these owners are not going to lose money on these teams. They're not going to become less valuable. Players missing time, though, is going to cost them, like you said, a lot more money now. But even it's not like in a union, the players who are making veteran minimums have as much say, and that's a fault of unions. Like, there are power hierarchies within them. But who's going to blink first? I don't know if this analogy is going to sit with Peter, you, and Ben as much, but what Jordan you're going to be familiar with this. Like, who's going to blink first? One of us is wearing individual lash pieces. The other one is wearing very, very heavy full lashes, right? The players are going to blink first. There's way more pressure on them. Their career is going to end. Owners can be owners till the day they die.
Yeah. And I'm always going to choose the side of the players. I think just for that exact reason. I always think about when we have this conversation from the WNBA wobble, from the documentary 144, they showed an inside look at, the players union, bringing everyone together and them saying like, okay, we're going to sit out the next game. Like, this is a decision we're going to do. Like, we think this is a good decision. And Courtney Williams stood up and she said, that's my paycheck. Like, you guys got it like that. You can sit out a game. I don't really have it like that. I'm here in the bubble away from my family to earn money and to earn a paycheck. So it's such a hard decision when it comes down to it, because it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to sit out. But I bet there's some players that are like, yeah, we can't sit out too long. Like, what are we doing here? We need to know so I can provide for my family. I can provide for myself. There's just so many layers to that as a player. And it's unfortunate that the owners have so much money that they're like, okay, we'll see how long we can sit out.
I've got a new yacht. So I'll hang on the yacht and you guys let me know when you want me to come back into shore.
No, it's a great point.
I'm not rich enough.
It's a great point because Chris Paul was the former head of the Players Union. He was a max guy. CJ McCollum's kind of been a max guy. And they have to bridge the gap between where they're at and the rank and file. And that's the toughest part of the union, is because you've got guys on minimum contracts where they feel an obligation to make sure they're not getting left out to dry. That happened in the NBA bubble as well, by the way. They were talking about, a whole bunch of guys where if you're on a minimum or you're a veteran, you might not play again. If they didn't restart the bubble after the Bucks protest, those guys, that could just be it for them. And that was one of the factors that they considered. One last thing to kind of underscore your point about just the wealth and the owners and the players' different perspectives. They're also going to be pretty soon negotiating contracts for their media rights deals. And it's possible that companies like Amazon can get in the mix where they just have crazy, crazy, crazy money, way bigger deals potentially than the current partners like ESPN, Disney, and Turner, right? Adam Silver actually called himself the belle of the ball when he was in Las Vegas, because he was talking about going to a media conference where everybody was so excited to see him because, he had the
gender fluid.
Well, hey, I was impressed by his
not
statement
mad
there,
at it.
but he was essentially saying like, look, everybody wants the NBA because you've got, it's so many hours of programming. It's all live. People will sit through the advertisement to watch the games. And then it's also just, dominate social media with the player personalities, and it's super clippable, right? So it's going to be all over Twitter, TikTok, and everything else. And so he said he's feeling like those negotiations are going to be better than ever because everybody wants a piece of the NBA. And that's one more reason where, well, it's hard to upset that if somebody's throwing tons and tons of money at you, it's really hard to say no, right? And a labor stoppage could kind of screw that up. So I think it's a much better time to be the NBA right now. I would say whether you're a player or an owner than it was 2 years ago. I'll tell you, man, the bubble was really scary. Before the bubble coming into that time period, it was like, how deep is this canyon going to go? And I think they came out of it quicker and in better shape than I expected. And it could really take off here. I mean, $60 million for a player for an annual, that could just be the start, especially if they get this new TV rights deal, Amazon drops a bunch of money on them. It could be 70, 80 before we know it.
Yeah.
If you stack $1 million in singles, it's the Empire State Building. If you stack $1 billion, it reaches outer space.
Is that's real?
It reaches you
look that up? Or you're just saying that? Stacking
$1 billion would measure to 67.9 miles and would reach from the Earth's surface into the lower portion of the troposphere, one of the major outer layers of the Earth's atmosphere.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Steve Ballmer's like, I got troposphere money.
That's better. Okay. So this is the one that I literally Googled billionaire, millionaire metaphor. This is another one that's also like miles high, which I really like because I feel like that's helpful. The other one, I know that it's a time metaphor. It's like if you a million seconds is like this far back in time. A billion is this far back. But here's a tweet that I'm quoting this guy, David O. Atkins. David, if you're problematic, I'm taking away this, I'm not attributing it to you anymore. I don't know him. He's got a check mark. That means nothing. Okay. He says the staircase is the best analogy for wealth inequity I've seen. If wealth were a staircase, 1, half of Americans would be on the first step. 2, the top 20% would be on step 5. 3, millionaires would be on step 11. Billionaires, step 10,000. Bezos himself, 133 miles high.
Whoa.
So yeah.
Oh.
Hopefully they don't partner with Amazon. We might have to beat that out because I got some job shit coming up. Okay. Anyway, that's very important to consider with the NBA. I know you're listening to this and you're like, I'm just an NBA fan. No, listen, that matters with these negotiations. That matters because if you think that the players are asking for too much, remember their time as a player is extremely limited, right? When you look at players who have been able to become billionaires, it's not a long list. You can count it on one hand, and it's not from their playing career alone. It's from sponsorships, endorsements, their playing career, and mostly investments.
It's majority from Nike, actually, right?
I don't know. That's like, I think with Jordan, they've broken it down, but I honestly don't know anyone
Michael,
beyond,
or LeBron.
but just NBA players specifically. I don't know anyone beyond.
LeBron,
yeah. Mike and LeBron. So anyway, sorry to get on the old socialist soapbox again, but here I am.
Well, hey, that sparked a thought for me, which is we talk so much about max salaries, and I've even been talking a lot about max salaries in this conversation because that's what people kind of gravitate towards. 60 million a year. I think if you're the players union and the money's rolling like this, you should really consider substantially increasing the minimum salaries because those haven't changed all that much. But if you're worried about, okay, like livelihood issues or taking care of everybody else, if you have this much money pouring in, it's like you could give it to the top 25 players and Bradley Beal can get this, $200+ million extension, even though they've never done really anything in Washington with him as the main guy. Or you could make sure that every guy, instead of getting 1.2 million, or you're playing on these two-way contracts or whatever else, you could make that $3-4 million and everybody's living better. So it's something to consider, something to advocate for if you're trying to push that particular agenda.
Totally. Because, unfortunately, that's never going to be something that you're going to get from ownership's side of a negotiation. But when we talk about what are you going to go in and fight for, if you want labor, if you want equality within a union, that's what you have to fight for. So hopefully we see something like that. That would be interesting. I think that the W has served as a good example, although it was not perfect and some things were left to be desired. As always, I hope that, they take from their example. Okay. Last thing, we want story time with Ben. I love when we have on people who are actually out there. And I asked you before if you have any fun anecdotes from teams, games, being in locker rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So the floor is yours.
Well, it's been a crazy run. I think I went on like 37 flights over the last 3 months to kind of cover these playoffs, something along those lines. And, I've maxed out every status like Delta, Hertz, they all like treat me like I'm a sultan or something at this point. It's been kind of just a wild time, just with the schedules like coming back together and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have crazy stories to explain. I guess, in terms, you were talking about T, right? So I've had 2 top 10 NBA players unfollow me for things I've either said on podcasts or written. That's one. I've had a top 20 player say he was going to pray for me in my DMs because of something that I said. And I think I was right. I think history proved me in our little disagreement, but I appreciated the prayers. I think my favorite story though, like that people, I tell this one to like journalism students, right? So I was doing a cover story on Jimmy Butler. It was his first cover story. And I think people know what Jimmy's personality, it's not some big, huge surprise, but he wasn't a superstar level guy at that point. It was like 2014. And we were going through the fact-checking process, and the fact-checking process for like major magazine stories is excruciating. It's awful. I always compare it to like a colonoscopy or whatever. Like they go through every little word. It all has to be right down to the thing. And I had to keep calling him back and saying, hey, we need to talk to this person. We need to talk to this person. And he was just like basically sick of it. Right. And so he started like cursing up a storm at me on the phone. And I think he thought I was going to go away if he just sort of flipped out on me. And it was like, well, I can't go back to the fact checker and just tell them that you're unhappy. That's just really not how it works. So I had to like call back again. And like, we're going through this, like, 2-3 rounds of things. And he was really upset about it. I understand why it was like private details about his life and all that. And it's not a fun thing to talk about. And certainly after you've given a really long interview to like have these people nickel and diming you after the fact, it's like, if you're an athlete, just like, come on, get off my back. Right. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So we had to just kind of keep doing it. Finally, I kind of lost my cool back at him, and I'm not proud to say it, but I was like kind of throwing back some profanities. I tried never to curse on podcasts, but I was like going back at him a little bit. And honestly, I think he liked that, because I think in the end he was trying to test me a little bit. I didn't realize it at the time, but so anyway.
He would like that.
Of course.
So we resolved that situation. I think at one point I was like, look, if you bleep and want to be on the cover of this magazine, it's going to be in every airport, then you have to help me with the bleep and bleep. Like it was kind of to that level. Everything got solved. Magazine came out great. Cover looked great. I think he was happy. I mean, you have to ask him, but I think he was pleased with it. Everyone, was all resolved. But I still kind of came away with it. When you have that kind of an argument, you're like a little, it's not scarred, but like you're not going to like forget it, right? So fast forward like 3 years, and I'm doing another story with him about something else. It wasn't a huge story. It was just something where he was going to talk. And 3 days before I had written that story, I had just published one on Blake Griffin, where it was like behind the scenes at a commercial shoot. And the lead of the story was about the size of Blake Griffin's calves, and how all these elementary school kids who were like extras in the commercial shoot were just staring at Blake Griffin's calves and like gawking at them, right? So I just kind of made that my intro, because it was like, oh, this is a funny hook. It's different. It's color. People will be into it, right? So I get onto the phone with Jimmy, and the first thing he says is, "You're going to write about my calves?" Somehow he had read the Blake Griffin story, and I think he was trying to like ice break probably from the previous thing, who knows, but he was just trying to like signal like, hey man, it's all good. The interview went on from there. So to me, to bring it full circle, it was one of the joys of the bubble actually to see Jimmy play at the peak levels of his capabilities. Because when I was first writing that story, I mean, he's telling me like, oh, I go into Bulls practice, I call myself Baby Mike, and I'm shooting all these turnarounds, and I want to be the point guard, and Derrick Rose is here, but this is going to be my team. I mean, he was just so full of swagger at that point. And you fast forward through the Chicago downfall, and then Minnesota, and then the Philly year, and you get to Miami, and they're kind of paying dues in Miami. And for him to go like head to head, just exhausted, 15-round bout with LeBron, 40 points in the finals, just play like peak Jimmy basketball. I mean, obviously he came up a little bit short, but just to kind of see him reach that apex, which when you're writing in 2014, you just hope he's ever going to get there, right? Or, you're thinking maybe this would be possible one day. It was really satisfying for me. So he can swear at me all he wants, but that's one of my favorite stories I like to tell people. And sometimes I guess the moral is you got to stand up for yourself. You can't just take it.
Yeah, and you stood up for fact checkers. That was the moral of the story for me. I'm a former retired fact checker. So thank you for standing up for us.
Well, is it as bad as I made it out? I mean, it's pretty tough, right?
Oh yeah, it's horrible. We have to go through every word.
It's the worst. My mom, when we were kids, she used to say you can't half-ass chores just to get out of them, because I was the queen of that. I half-assed fact checking to get out of it, because when you get something wrong, they're going to be like, all right, take her off of it. Fuck this. So yes, it was that bad. Ben, thank you so much. This was wonderful. You are full of insightful things, and we want you to come back very soon.
Thanks,
it was my
Ben.
pleasure. Thanks for having me. Love the show. Keep it up, and hopefully we'll see you soon.